Welcome back to another episode of Ants Chats on Sports Consultancy, AMSC, with me, Anthony Morrissey, the CEO and founder of AMSC. When I'm recording this, it's nearly Christmas, and as we say in Sweden, Santa is ready to come down the road because he literally just lives up the road, as everyone tells me. It's been a very, very interesting week. And when this comes out, you'll be able to know that I've just got a contract with Rowing Ireland at AMSC, so we've grown with that. We've got our Dalcastian Patrons program at Clare GAA that's working really well. We've got work with Neptune Basketball, trying to see if we can get that going. So again, it's been a nice busy week for me. As you can see behind me, that side. My Chicago Bears jersey's up. Unfortunately, the Bears didn't win. But let's see where we are at the end of all the draft talk. Let's not talk about that. But as everyone says to me, you're not really here to listen to me talk. You're seeing who I'm going to bring in as my guest this week. And this week I have a fantastic guest for you. I really, really do. Someone that I first got to know when I worked at Munster Rugby at one of our dinners. And herself, Dorothy Wall and Emer Constantine, absolutely blew the show away in London just after COVID. And everybody was talking about them after the event. It was just sensational how they did. And whenever I was doing this podcast, I always said to myself, I want to get her onto the show. So instead of blowing smoke, I might as well just bring her on. Maeve Og O Leary, how are you doing?
Hi, Ant. I'm great. Thank you for the lovely intro.
Very nice. It was the truth. It was the truth. The Munster dinner in London, I remember, was just after COVID, and it was a bit crazy. And we got you guys over there, and you were absolutely brilliant. And I know Jackie Hurley was on the stage interviewing you guys, and it always stuck in the back of my head how unbelievably fantastic professional you were, but also how articulate and how passionate you were about not just your sport, but about your career. So definitely something that I would say to you. Look, as I do with everybody in this, I'll go right back to the very start and work from there, right? So when did you first get into sport? And I remember reading something about it, that rugby wasn't your number one love or number first love. But when you're in Ballina and Tipperary, I'm assuming you're going to say GAA, but I wanted to ask, what was the number one sport, or what was their first thought?
Yeah, I suppose I grew up across from the GAA club, so from the age of about 4, and I'm the youngest of 5 as well, so Mum and Dad would have had us all over in the GAA clubs from the age of about 4. I was up playing camogie. Ladies football isn't as big down in North Tipperary, so I was camogie through and through, and that was probably my main sport. A little bit of tennis here and there, a little bit of taekwondo as you do growing up, that kind of stuff. But camogie was my first kind of sport from the age of 4 up until 19, 20 years old.
And what's your first memory of sport? Whether that's playing or whether that's watching, or what's the first memory that you can go back to?
Yeah, it's hard. I've been asked this question before, and like I can't even remember what happened yesterday sometimes. But I suppose just trucking along to my brother's rugby sessions. My dad would have coached out in Scariff RFC, and we had this massive 9-seater like van, bus, whatever you want to call it. We used to bring the lads out to training, and I'd say I was 5 or 6 in the back of this bus. I was as cool now. I'd never that was kind of it, and we'd go out and just throw the ball around, just mess, really, me and my sister. But they were probably my earliest memories, was just tagging along with my brother and dad.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I remember, I'm a lot older than you, but I remember as a kid, we used to go to football matches or soccer matches, and my dad would bring the whole team in the back of the car. So there was no health and safety, right? It was like, there was like the goalkeeper, the whole back 4, the goalkeeper, me, and around 5 other lads in the back of the car, and we're driving all around Cork City to go and find some little pitch to play on. So those definitely were the days.
Absolutely.
Those definitely were the days. And then from yourself, I know you mentioned just there that your brother played rugby at a decent standard, a professional rugby player, to be fair to him. Yeah. But what was the thought process from you then? Was it just a movement that would automatically go into rugby, or was it something that you kind of clicked in your teens? Or when was it that the rugby bug kicked you?
Yeah, I suppose when I grew up in Ballina, Kinlough, my town in Tipperary, there actually wasn't a rugby club at all. So I suppose in my head it was never an option. And when I was 13, I started playing camogie at county level, just under 13s. So that was kind of the main thing I had on my horizons, was to just go on and keep playing county. Got a bit of a thrill out of being able to perform at a top level, and all the different feelings that come with it. But it's definitely something you kind of chase. And then when I was 15, there was a club started up in my town, so I decided to just give it a go. Obviously, I was fond of rugby from watching my brother. He's like my idol. So I said, sure, I'll give it a go, see how I get on. And I think I just loved the physicality aspect to it. It's definitely what kept me in it. Camogie, there's no physicality really. You can't really think there was a rule brought in this year or last year that you can now put in a bit of a shoulder, but definitely nowhere near the physicality that rugby has. So I think that was probably the draw for me, and I just really enjoyed it. And there's such a unique team aspect in rugby of this respect you'll know yourself from working in Munster Rugby, but there really is just such this bond and respect among teammates. So I think I loved that as well. There was never that issue of, oh, will I have anyone to chat to at training tonight? It was straight in. It's a bit of a family welcome, open arms. So it was, that was probably the thing that drew me in.
I was interviewing Niamh recently, and Niamh turned around to me and she said when her first game for Munster, she didn't know the rules. And that there was stuff at the end of a ruck. She didn't have a clue what she was clearing out. She was being coached at halftime what to do. And I always found that strange, considering she's one of the greatest rugby players to ever play the Irish country has ever seen. And from your perspective, when you got in there at 15 and you'd been playing camogie, and as you said, it wasn't that physical, was the back row where you instantly went in and felt that's where I feel most comfortable, or did you start somewhere else?
Yeah, I actually started at out half 12. So 10, 12, that's where I kind of started. I suppose when I got down to the club and got training for a few months, I'm definitely a loud and open communicator. So I think having someone who could chat there, and maybe a little bit of a background from my brother, he was also a 10. So I suppose I just kind of wanted to copy him anyway. But I did start in at 10 and 12, and I played there. Wasn't too great now, but I played there until I was about 19, and that's actually when I shifted over to the back row. So I spent most of my days in running crash balls or just being the distributor at 10 or 12. So it's definitely changed since then.
And from your perspective, what makes a good 7? What's the good? I'm assuming 7 is your favorite position. I'm sorry if you think if it's another position. But what makes a good 7 for you?
Yeah, I suppose being the 7 is really just the workhorse. Like on the team, you need to be quick, but you need to be so physical. So I suppose that's why they kind of say like centers, back rows, there is that little bit of a crossover. You have that speed, you have that power, but you're also extremely physical. I think someone who's dogged, willing to get the ball back when you don't have it, getting up off the line the hardest, and probably just staying consistent then throughout the game, trying to stay alive throughout the game. But definitely that person who's, I suppose, leading the pack around in different ways, like if it's the second rows and they're the big ball carriers, or if it's the front rows and they're making all the hits. But I think definitely being that workhorse, and so you have to have all of the parts of your game need to be quite high. So whether that's in attack, in defense, in the line out, you need to be ready to go all over the park. So I think, it's definitely a complex one, but it's class, and I love to just go to work. So it definitely suits
100%, 100%. And then you get into the Munster squad, or get into the Munster development squads, I'm assuming, coming through, and then you're getting a chance to play for that Munster senior team and getting that jersey. Just before I go in about yourself, from your family's perspective, you being the baby, you being the youngest of the family, how proud do you think you make them feel when they saw you walking out? First of all, in a Munster jersey, I'll get to the Ireland bit in a minute. Was that there? Was there would you feel that as a pressure, or did you feel that as something that was liberating? And oh my God, my mom, dad, and my brothers and sisters are here to watch me play.
Yeah, no, definitely liberating. I mean, I don't think it was never really in my plans to be able to play to such a high level. So I think that's definitely like boomed my expectations. And I think, the reality of playing sport is there's so many ups and downs, and I definitely don't feel my family as a pressure. It's more so just a support blanket. They remind me of, like there was a time where I wasn't doing this and how far I've come. Because I suppose when you're in it, sometimes you kind of lose sight of that a little bit. But definitely not a pressure, but more so just probably like my hype circle, my confidants, that. So I'm very lucky.
Are you one of those people that goes home to a shrine room? And my sister's about to me that I have a shrine room in my mother's house where I go home and there's like pictures of me in a corner. You're not one of them as well. You're not confined to a shrine room, do you?
Not really. Now, in fairness, there's a good few photos of Shane and myself around, but there is of all of them. I think mom couldn't have it favoritism over one. She'd never be able to tell you her favorite child. So
I love to hear. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. And then from your own personal perspective, and when you were handed the jersey, when you were handed a Munster Rugby jersey, and having gone through what you've gone through, having seen your brother play a professional sport, and now you've been given the chance, when you sat there on your own for a moment, whether that's at home, whether that's in the dressing room, whatever it was, what was the thing you were thinking about when you first got the jersey?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit of pressure from the point of view of, okay, I've been picked now. I actually need to go and turn up. I definitely tried not to run away with it too much. I suppose my head was just on the task, literally on the task that I needed to get done. I don't get that satisfaction until I've come off the pitch. If that makes sense. So I suppose my head was just, what's my task here? Can I get it done? And then, you definitely feel amazing after coming off the pitch on a Saturday evening. I suppose Sunday, Monday, then you're looking to, okay, what's next week? But definitely after a campaign, you get that real feeling of, wow, I can't believe I've actually done this, and it's been excellent. And I suppose you can review your performances, but like when you come off the back of a campaign, there's usually months of work that have come onto that. So it's definitely satisfying, and I think you need to be reminded of how far you've come and what you've actually done. So yeah, I suppose I focus on the task first, but once it's over, then I can definitely enjoy it.
And I think that's where any brand that's watching this, I think that's where brands find it interesting, sports people, because they're so focus driven on what's coming next. Focus driven on the projects that are there. I spoke with Billy Holland and Jack O'Donoghue on this exact subject, and they answered pretty much the exact same you just did, which was very much focused on, this is where the project is, this is what my next step is, this is how I get there. While people who have never played professional sport at that level or a high sport will go, oh my God, this is amazing feeling. This is once in a lifetime. Moving on from yourself onto the Irish platform and getting into that Irish squad and getting an opportunity to play for Ireland, to represent your country. And that's another one that must stand out as a high point for you. Would that be the exact same though, in the sense of when you got the jersey, it's like, okay, my job now is against whoever I'm playing. I need to make sure I'm focused on this. Or was there a little bit of a different feeling when it came to playing for Ireland versus, let's say, different feelings in fair, but it's just a different motivation for playing for Ireland?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, province compared to country, it definitely, it's bigger, obviously. But I think it's pretty similar. You got to stay on task. Definitely around your first cap for your country, there's lots of hype and lots of love and lots of support, and it's so important. Like everyone who was around me at the time that I did get my first cap definitely reminded me, you need to enjoy this now, and like enjoy the support. And this is such an unbelievable moment. But I suppose as the player, you follow that same process and you do think about the job. And after, obviously, again, you feel unbelievable and you get to kind of enjoy it. But no, you certainly stay on task. And yeah, like the lad said, you definitely stay on task, rugby first.
So from your own perspective then, what does your weekly rugby schedule look like? Because are you still in university, or have you finished university?
I'm finished now, yeah, I'm finished.
No. Are you full-time employed, or are you working within the RFU contract scale as well?
Yeah, so I have a contract with the IRFU, and I also have a job on the outside as well that I work part-time. I did my degree and master's in public relations, so I have that on the side in Dublin, and then I'm also contracted, so I'm busy out, but it's good to be busy.
And what would your week look like in this kind of week format? You play for Blackrock College, isn't it?
Up in Dublin? That should be my club. Yes.
So what would that look like?
So it's pretty hectic, in fairness, but we're all in the same boat, like, to be fair, a lot of the girls. But with the contract, we train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in a general week when we're kind of out of competition. And that would be probably looking at 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., 3 p.m. And then I work the afternoons from home for Wilson Hartnell, my public relations agency I'm in, from about 3 till 6. And then Wednesday is usually our down day, so that's the day that I'm lucky enough to be able to head into the office. And then club training is Tuesdays and Thursdays. So when we're kind of in season, we'd be heading down there. A lot of the contracted girls, we will just go down, watch, help out on a Tuesday, and then be released to train on a Thursday. And then hopefully on a good week, you'd have a club match at the weekend. So that's the general week, I suppose, out of competition. But the women's rugby calendar, it's gone so busy. So, or to be fair, our schedule is like changing constantly, and it's just about figuring out how that's going to work. And with the staff, like the S&C staff or managers and the RFU, they just kind of make that work for us. And so it's constantly changing, but that's how a general week would be.
And from your own perspective, then the Irish contract would have come in the last year. Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, November 2022.
Perfect. So would you have seen a massive difference already from what you would have been doing yourself external to that, to what you're now doing, and the responsibilities and taking rugby not just as a job and a hobby? Hobby's extreme, but it's now a proper full-time paid job where you're expected to perform based on the pay you're given. Do you see that as something that you've kind of enjoyed, or do you see the future of that being hopefully potentially being full-time?
Yeah, I suppose it's crazy because you never think that, waking up in the morning and going out to the rugby pitch and into the gym is ever going to be your job. So I think it's still a little bit of a, oh, I can't believe this is actually like, you can kind of get paid for this. I think a lot of the girls, when we did go in on our first day, we were like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And it probably took a few months to settle in. But yeah, like I suppose all of our lives look extremely different now. Before that, I was working a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And I suppose then you have to fit your gym sessions and your pitch sessions in around that, which can, be really taxing on the body. And that is the reality for majority of the women's rugby players in Ireland at the moment. There's a lot of people who do have to work their 9 to 5 jobs. And then once the Six Nations camp comes around, or WXV, they, work out with work to get some time off and come in. But I think that 9 to 5 and then trying to train yourself in the evenings or the mornings, it's definitely taxing and it can definitely take tolls on your body. So being able to have the contract has been something that, it gives you proper time to train, the proper resources, you have enough time to recover. And I suppose your training is prioritized, which is something that like we're so lucky to be able to do. So there's definitely been a major change. And I think then when you go back out onto the pitch and you can look at skills that you've been working on every single day for the last 6 months, you definitely see an improvement. Having the time and resources to be able to do that and work on your rugby, yeah, it's so different and it's an unbelievable opportunity.
I live in Sweden. In Sweden, sport doesn't matter whether it's male or female. It's just, I tell this story all the time on this podcast. When I first moved over here, my father-in-law said, do you want to go to a game? Got in the car, drove to the game, got my burger, got my ticket, got into the seat in the stadium. And once I sat down, it's only then that I realized it was a women's game. At no stage, it was a game of football. Didn't matter what it was. And they have a rule over here around 50% for women, 50% for men when it comes to on TV. Ireland is starting to move that way, especially if you look at the women's soccer team that went down to Australia and how they performed. Do you feel part of the kind of version of that kind of global ambassador, but you're very much an ambassador for women's sport, and that you're showcasing women's sport? And I don't mean that to be patronizing in any way. I mean that as do you feel an extra responsibility for that you see girls coming up behind you who aren't looking at Ronan O'Gara or aren't looking at Jack Crowley? They're now looking at Maeve Og O Leary, Dorothy Wall as their heroes. Is that something that you would understand, or is that similar to what you said a minute ago, which is the process is so important for you to follow, you may worry about that when you're finished?
No, I think that being a role model, it's really important. And I think as like we were little girls once as well. And, when I was younger, women's rugby was not as available. Like there literally wasn't a club in my town until I was 15 years old, whereas the lads have something from the age of about 4, and that's how like, over the years they can become so skillful and so developed, but it's that rate is slower with girls. So I think we know as the senior women's team that's a responsibility. And I wouldn't even say it's a pressure. I'd say it's more of kind of like an honor and like maybe something that we thought mightn't be possible, or it definitely didn't look like it was possible at some stages growing up. And I wouldn't have necessarily been able to watch the women's rugby on TV until the age of like 16 or 17. So it would have had to been men's sport that I was watching. So I think the fact now that there is those resources and we can be the role models for little girls, it's more so exciting than anything. And like hopefully it just influences them to be able to pick up a rugby ball or whatever ball it is, or no ball at all, as early as possible. So I think it's more so an excitement and like obviously an honor to be able to hopefully be an influence on some young girls.
I was watching Access Munster, which is behind the scenes stuff within Munster, and my 83-year-old mother she's an absolute massive Munster fan. She was watching it. She got a subscription to it, and she rang me, and she was absolutely delighted to see that you guys were on one of the episodes of one of the shows for it. And she said it was brilliant to be able to see girls with the level of passion and the pride and the physicality that goes into the sport, which is what Access Munster, to be fair, showed that off. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I think it was great. Like it's kind of rare that you'd have cameras down around training. Definitely as a women's team, it's not something like sponsors coming on board. Like, all about that. Like it wouldn't be something that's as common, I suppose. So when our coaches were talking to us and saying, look, Access Munster are hoping to come down, like I suppose I definitely jumped and was like, brilliant, great. Like all you want to do is be able to get, I suppose, more content and more behind the scenes. Obviously, we're all like 15, 23 faces, whatever, but trying to get in behind the scenes and to let people see more than that is probably one of the biggest sellers in sport. You know, you can attach yourself to a player, but once you know the person behind it, like that is even more of a selling point. So I think it was just such excitement, and it's been great to have Access Munster down, and some of the content they create is class. So to be able to kind of be involved that way, it's unreal. And we do only train for about 2 months of the year with our provinces. So even to be able to get little snippets out there, and hopefully loads of people got to see it, and they kind of gave a little bit more insight, and hopefully gives more people a bit more of a drive to follow us as a team. And yeah, I think that's, your arms have to be wide open in women's sport for stuff like that, to help it grow and help more people engage with the sport and stuff. So
also the presence of M&S, I think this year has been really good for Munster and within the women's sport, and looking just at women's Munster Rugby women's team. And I think that's the future. I think when I first worked at Munster Rugby, I'll be honest, the women's game were the secondary to that conversation. So people would become a sponsor of Munster Rugby, and then they go, oh, by the way, does that include the women's team? Rather than it being part of it. Now the conversation is, I just want the women's team, or you better include the women's team, or I want this and this for women's games as well. And I must admit, I'm loving the fact of having 2 older sisters, a mother who is an absolute obsessive sports fan, having a wife who comes from a sporty family. I love it. I love the impact that sports do. I love when we went over to London and bringing you guys over there to show off your talents, not just on the rugby field, but you said it there a minute ago, your personalities and everything that comes through that. When it comes to playing, let's say in Dublin with Blackrock and playing with Munster and then playing with Ireland, is there longevity for you that you see within women's sport that is the next steps? Like, what's the next steps that would be there for women's sport to take that to the next level where you will potentially get a contract? Is that sponsorship? Is that having revenues? Is it TV rights? Or is it a mixture of absolutely everything?
Yeah, I think it's there's so much conversation around, and there's so much to talk about it as well. But I do think it's a little bit of everything. Obviously the first thing is like the players themselves. Like that's what you got to kind of look at, I suppose, and deal with. And once you have a team like that, and once you get more cohesion, more players contracted, more funding into that at the highest level, you get a team that's playing together all the time, training together all the time. Then you get a team that's performing. And once a team is performing, you can't help but have people following the sport. Like we saw it with the Irish soccer team, the Irish hockey team as well, like Katie Taylor. Like once you're performing, like the Irish people will get on anything that makes them proud, and that is their country. So I suppose starts with funding, getting players together into performance, and once you have people coming on board like that, that's when brands want to come in. And I think there's such a unique opportunity in women's sport for brands. There is such a unique selling point to it. Obviously we're like smaller than a men's team would be in terms of a following, like, you know, like the Irish men's rugby team, and they're nearly celebrities at this stage with you know the amount of following they have. And
Jesus, don't tell them that, Jesus.
But I think you see it anyway online, like, and I think the women's players, it's a little bit of a smaller following, and I suppose your engagement with their followers or the young girls who watch them, it's a little bit more, I suppose you can get a little bit more personality and a little bit more back from the women's players. Like they're so excited to do it, that I think there's such a unique selling point there for brands to even get on board. But yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit of everything. But when you have a team together that is cohesive and has success, like we've seen it with the Irish men's rugby team, it's unbelievable. Like that's what people want to see, and that's how you get more engagement, more followers of the sport, and then you get brands as well. So
yeah, and I think that's what brands like to see as well. They don't just want to see, because the days of before of getting a sponsorship deal where you'd sign a big long deal, you get a couple of advertisements, some tickets, some hospitality, and you'll be fine. See you next year. Those days are gone. They want to do CSR projects. They want to get behind the scenes. They want to feel that it's not, their sponsorship isn't just about their promotion of their club, or promotion of their brand. They want to feel that they've helped in some way and succeeded in making that team grow with them. And I think that's a new age type of sponsor. And from women's sponsor sport, I mentioned M&S earlier on, but you could go with Aon with the Irish team. You can go with different sports right across. I love how Sky promoted the women's soccer team for the Soccer World Cup. I loved it. I loved the advert where that girl's kicking the ball against the wall, talking about the Irish national team players' names. That's how you do it, because that's the next step. That's the next level, and it allows you to do it. They also did a campaign, because I always speak about the ball one. I never speak about the one where they just interviewed the players before the World Cup, and all they did is have the player in front of a camera, and then they had one member of their family talking to them for 2 minutes. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely powerful, and it cost a tenner. Literally, whatever the cost of your edit would be. So you don't have to spend all that money when it comes to sponsorship and when it comes to all that stuff. And the one thing you said I totally agree with is women are more open to those kind of conversations because they understand, you guys understand as players, and I probably should ask you this question. You guys understand the importance that it would be to have those brands connected into you. When you walk in the door to an Irish camp, or when you walk in the door to a Munster camp, do you see a difference from when you first walked in the door to now when it comes to sponsorships and how sponsors activate their stuff around you guys?
Yeah, definitely. I think a prime example, like you've just said, is M&S. We've never actually really had a sponsor. I'm trying to think back with Munster Rugby that's kind of come on board and we've actually seen their impact. A lot of the time there will be a logo on a jersey or a pair of shorts, but to actually see a sponsor's impact, definitely, like, I suppose M&S kind of put out feelers as to, what is it that you guys need? And we're traveling loads all the time. So we were like, well, if we could get some like snacks for the car, bit of shopping, bit of groceries, and they like were so willing to be able to give us that. And I don't think that's something that people particularly saw, like that we were actually bringing home bags of food, but like that's something that's impacted the players, and that's just brand to player. And I think that relationship is really important. So yeah, there certainly has been a change, and definitely at like the provincial level and even in the club level. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the next steps. And that's the next steps within women's sport. That's the next step within sport, where it becomes a conversation of just one-to-one, but brand to player, because then the hope is that the player becomes a superstar and the player will remember that brand. And that's where you can grow on long-term longevity. Look, I've got 26 minutes of your time. I'm coming into my favorite part, which is what I call my top 10, which is where I ask you questions and you have 2 seconds to answer. No, I'm lying. You can answer whatever length of time you want. I started doing this as a quick fire, and I was told straight away it's not quick fire because I had to think about some of the answers. So take your time and answer them whatever you want. You ready?
Yes.
Netflix or the cinema?
Netflix.
What's the last thing you watched on Netflix?
Oh, Selling Sunset. Sorry.
Wife adores it. Wife adores it. So I watched one episode. That was enough for me. Burger and chips or Sunday roast?
Sunday roast. When you're a college student for 4 years, you just want some Sunday roast.
Oh yeah, go back. I'm living abroad. I went back to Ireland a couple of weeks ago to my mother's house, and she cooked a Sunday roast for me, and I actually nearly cried. It was just sensational. In Sweden, we have a thing called fika, and fika is where everyone at 3:00 meets for coffee and cake, right? And it's like you could be in work, you could be in the friends, you could be with family, but at 3:00, everyone stops what they're doing, has lovely cups of coffee and lovely like pastry cakes. So, fika or the pub?
Oh, fika.
Best stadium you've ever been in. So whether it's playing or just physically being.
Oh, that's a good one. I think the coolest one I've ever been in was probably Leicester Tigers. The stands they're literally on the pitch. It feels like the crowd is literally down with you. And then played in Toulouse as well, which was really cool. Very cool professional setup there.
Wow. And the hardest opponent you ever played against?
Oh, honestly, back to the Interpro Derby, it's probably the Munster Leinster ones. They are definitely the most gritty ones. You know what an Interpro is like, but you're tearing into each other, and you're often playing your friends, so it's extra nerve-wracking.
Makes it even better. The best movie you've ever seen?
Oh, my favorite movie is Parent Trap. I love it.
Oh, brilliant call. Brilliant call. What's the one can't live without item?
Oh, can't live without. Probably my sister. Is she an item? Like, she's like,
that'll do.
She's my thing. She's like my best friend. I can't live without her.
You're brilliant. She loved this. I'll make sure to clip this bit and send it to you. Send it on to her. She may be the same answer to this. Who is your hero?
Probably my brother Shane. Yeah, he's had a great career and been through loads, so he's definitely my hero.
God, your family, you're going to cut this and just give it to your family for Christmas. This is fantastic. They love it. This is the last question. Last question. I can leave you alone then, right? It's the one I ask all the time. If you could define sport and what it means to you in 2 sentences, how would you do that?
Sport is a blessing and a roller coaster, I'd say.
Brilliant. Brilliant answer. Brilliant answer. Brilliant answer. Maeve Og, thank you so much for your time. I know you just come off a training field, so you're probably absolutely shattered and you need to get some M&S food into you, but I massively appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on.
And best of luck.
Cheers. I told you that was going to be brilliant. I told you that was going to be brilliant. That's someone who's articulate about what they're talking about and as passionate about their sport as anybody else would be. And the fact then that they've actually had to go up to Dublin to set up their career and then also go and train with the RFU, go to train with their club and also do a full-time job at the same time, that's inspiring for anybody. What's really interesting as well is she spoke about M&S, which is really, really smart, is M&S actually contacted the players and asked the players what did they want. And then the players got their product and they felt $1 million. So now, not only are you having a conversation where the player feels comfortable going out and representing their province because they're going to be very happy, or a national team or a local team, they're going to be nationally happy anyway, but they have a link and a feeling connecting into their sponsor. And now the sponsorship isn't just about what goes on and what goes brand awareness, all that kind of stuff. It's now much more different to that and much more long lasting and longevity wise. That can be used for any sponsorship around the world, by the way, folks. That's an idea that people need to start getting in their heads. Sponsorships isn't just about giving money, putting a name on a jersey or on a short and hoping it gets seen on TV. The days of TV arc, non-TV arc signings, they're gone. What you need to start thinking about is how can I get the best attitude around the player? What's the way we can get the player access towards the fans? And how can the fans see the link and connection into it? It's a fascinating topic. I could be here all day, but I'm in my shed and it's cold. Folks, keep a look at all my website. There's all my details are at the bottom of all this about all the stuff that I'm going on. I've got loads of lovely podcasts, including one of Maeve O's managers and Niamh Briggs that's coming out pretty soon. And obviously the other ones that I've got on my line. Go on to www.amsc.se. All the details are at the bottom and I'm delighted to jump on and do it. I'm recording this over Christmas, but I probably won't be sending it out till January. And by that stage, we'll know whether Munster are qualified for a quarter-final of a Heineken Cup or what else is going on. No, it's not called Heineken Cup anymore. It's Invested Cup. I get in trouble. Anyway, my music's going to kick me out. Thanks very much for listening. Look after yourselves. Take care.